had 3 to 4 years of not only core instruction but also supplemental and extra intervention time and work like that in both language, and the child's still not progressing, this might be we're using the lagging data from the year prior to go ahead and identify the child earlier and say, you know what, this kid has come to the front of our conversation. We can't let this child go another year, especially before the FSA assessment, without really considering if the child has other needs other than what we're providing.
Okay. We would just have to really make sure that we have the people in place in order to be able to make those determinations. So since the ESE liaison, and we had addressed this in our questions as well, will provide strategies and supports to the students with disabilities and really be an integral part of the IEP team, it appears.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Team IEP team, yes.
The IEP team, after the student's determined to be eligible, yes. So that person, it appears in your clarifying statement here, will provide enrichment activities for the gifted students. That's what was stated. So what kind of certification will that person possess if that person is going to be such an integral part of being able to, like, the decision-making process moving forward in the classroom?
That person will have not only ESC certification, but also will be at least striving toward gifted endorsement. When we talk about this, we're talking about securing the people. We're talking about making sure we're hiring the right people to be on the place in the bus to move the bus forward. When we hire specifically, if we know we're hiring, which we'll be hiring very early, hopefully in January, February, we will say, we need you to start on this endorsement. We need you to start on making sure you've taken these courses. And so therefore, even if we don't have the person in front of us that seems to have the right certifications on paper, we're moving them forward to say, this is where we need you to go if you're going to be part of this process.
Okay. I just had one other question. Do I have time?
Yes.
Okay. We had an MTSS electronic data system that we're working through, but it's not fully implemented yet. And when we asked for that clarifying question, you said that you would be using your own software system. What does that look like?
So we happen to own 3 software companies, and one of the things that we were hoping to do is actually work with you guys. And because the needs of our population are just a little bit different, and there's going to be more things, we've already started working with the CEO of one of my companies to discuss, like, what are we going to build and how are we going to utilize that. And so we're hoping that over the, come hell or high water this summer, we start working with your team as to what do you need and what do you want to see, because I don't want that to be an island. I think that needs to be our own software that then can connect into what you guys are doing. And that's our intent, is to actually write something.
So is your intent for it to be part of the progress monitoring?
Yeah.
Is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we have to play good cop, bad cop, and I always get to be the bad one. But I want to show you an example of the frustration, I think, on both parts. So in the ESC section, we said that you didn't really provide a thorough description of services for gifted versus enrichment. And and you did quote to the same paragraph that you had in the application, which was not to tell us, it was talking about the ESC liaison, the IP team will work together to provide enrichment opportunities. And again, you really didn't tell us. And then the answer now to your retort to our limitation there is the applicant consists of 6 board members, 4 of which, again, it describes your distinguished board. Again, there's no response. So it wasn't in the application and it wasn't here. And that's part of the frustration. Okay. And even with the curriculum, you point out that it's not required to be described, the curriculum. And we're talking about the K curriculum. And you're right, it doesn't have to be described. However, if you don't describe it, you have to tell us if it's not fully developed. Curricular choices, proposed curricular choices, textbooks, how you're going to do it, when it's going to be approved, who are the key people, the focus of the curriculum. So all these things here are not in the application. And then we are referred to page 86, which is the timeline for starting up the school. So that's what I'm trying to say. We're not trying to be overly critical, but we look at the application. We look at the one sentence here. We don't have what curriculum. And then we look at the rest of the questions that are supposed to be addressed in the template, and it's not there. And then when we bring that to your attention, the reply is, we don't have to have one. And it's like, you're right, you don't. But if you don't have one, you have to answer all of these other questions. So again, I'm just trying to show you that we really go by the application and what is there and the response. And I sense these, passionate people, great idea. great fit for Sarasota. We have to go by what's in the application.
Right. In a lot of the responses that we got back from whoever wrote the responses, it said, the applicant doesn't seem to understand the difference between enrichment and gifted. The applicant doesn't understand the difference between ELL and non-ELL.
Right.
The applicant doesn't understand. So when we, when we're told that we don't understand, and you see who you have here, I mean, I have 2 children that had, one of them is thrice exceptional and gifted, and I've dealt with this child for 20 years. So it was
So in the past, in the future, I'm going to say the application does not describe. Okay, and we do go back and forth, but most folks understand that we're talking about the written application. So I get it that you get it, but if there's one description that says we'll have a plan, well, then that's not really a plan. So it may be up here in your head, you have all the resources. So, right, so typically folks assume, and maybe that's a faulty assumption on my part, that based on the written application has not been addressed. And again, we use the same language that the state has. It's not clear and coherent, or it doesn't appear. We don't have evidence that. So again, no disrespect for the distinguished board members. It's just, again, we are stuck and fixated on the application process.
Would you like a response regarding the gifted question?
I don't think we have time, but no, and that's fine. We know that you get that part of it. So, okay, so Jamie, we have to be quick.
Given time. So, given the time.
I know. I see you waving, Judy.
I think I have the same problem like everybody else did. It's a great idea, but when I look at my section or throughout the application itself, and I look for where is your ESOL plan, you do say you're going to follow the consent decree. You don't mention if you're going to follow the district ELL plan. So if you don't follow the district ELL plan and the application says that there's a compelling plan, I do not find that here. There is no plan. So for me, that's very frustrating because again, like everybody else has said, it's a great idea. And it's, I think, something that would be of great service to our ESOL families and language learners in our district. But there is nothing that I can say. There's no meat and potatoes here.
Thank you. The majority of Sarasota County's ELL plan will be reflective in our plan. The variance will be when it comes to which program support you're going to choose. We're going to be choosing the dual language model as far as the bottom. But as far as identification and the process regarding the first 10 days identifying with an IPT, and then the tracking to ensure the child's progressing, and then ensuring that our teachers are endorsed, additionally having instructional strategies that are identified as productive for ELL students, identified within the lesson plans, and ensuring that that child is not cordoned off to a corner. All those will be maintained to ensure that not only is the child's need getting service, but also that we're within compliance. So the majority, yes, that piece right there regarding which model we're using will be the one on.
Well, and see, I heard you say you talked about identification, you talked about IPT,
Yes.
you talked about
Yes, sir.
strategies. None of that is here. It's not written in here. I can't go, by. I understand you've looked for a lot of research, great research. There's a great interest, but what you just finished saying is totally absent in this application. So therefore, that's why we go like. For me, it was frustrating.
Yes, that makes sense.
It's frustrating because I do not see it. So if you're going to, and I have a question, if you can explain this one to me. You're going to exit a K student. What process? How would that look like if it were to exit a student who's in kindergarten?
So if the child was entered even by kindergarten,
Right.
Then we're looking at making sure that they're speaking and listening as at a certain level. I'd have to pull the numbers out to make sure I know what exactly that level is.
It goes by the product used. That's when I called the ELL department at the DOE, they went through everything, and it goes. Every district has discretion as to what product they use to test into the program, we don't have discretion as to how we exit the program. So to test the program, the reason why we didn't put it, because we don't necessarily know that Ballard and Teague is the one that we want to do that, because we have to go by what Ballard and Teague tells us is a speaking and listening metric. And this is what this is a community response. The only reason we're here is because we want to do better than what is now available at the district. And we want these kids to not be, 58% of Hispanics by 8th grade are 2 or 3 levels behind in reading. That's what we want to fix. So when the ELL, the SALA, DOE people up there told me, here's the 6 other programs, and some other districts have been very successful with some other identification programs. And as far as the ELL section, I mean, this school has a heart for those speakers of other languages. I mean, to get something back from you where you failed us on ELL or you failed us on professional development, which is his life. But anyway, as far as...
we feel the application.
The application.
We're all learning from that.
The ELL, we answered the questions that the FLDOE gave us. And in there, it doesn't say, how do you identify a kindergarten that's exiting? That's what the clarification is for.
And
and that is
just to make sure that Jamie wasn't having an off day or the committee wasn't having an off day, we did share this with experts from the other coast, some colleagues, and their question was for ELL. She said, they're talking about the dual language immersion program. They're not talking about ELL services. And in the curriculum part, they're saying, I'm not sure what's going on with the 90-20. Again, not clear. If someone's unsure and they're speculating, so that's part of it. Again, it goes back to, you're a business person. You put in a detailed business plan. The idea is there, and then you might talk about the idea on the golf course, but then they're in the community, but then it has to be really gelled for the proposal. You're applying for a grant, the same thing.
Absolutely.
So in any other county, this also would have the same deficiencies, I guarantee you. So again, think about that way. Our heart is in the idea.
That's a strong statement. We're Sarasota. That's a strong statement. I mean, what you just said. I mean, I don't think that's verifiable, but that's okay. Go.
Well, we can try it again. We can submit this application to the counties and see what happens. So, okay.
Thank you for your question. The details on the exiting, the services, the making sure the teacher is certified, all very important when we're talking about making sure we're servicing our kids.
And that's part of what is a plan, and that's all written in the consent decree.
It's statutory.
Right, it's statutory.
Right, yes, sir.
So
you guys,
how you're going
just
to implement,
clarify,
and
you
how
want
it's
us
going to be implemented.
To repeat, because what we were told from the beginning was, don't repeat things that we do. So
If you follow our plan, don't put it in there. We don't want 700 pages.
So that was
700 pages in the attachment we
Right.
don't want. We want you to articulate how your school is going to jive with our plan.
I'm understanding now exactly
Okay.
what the situation was, because, we took from that comment that, oh, okay, if it's statutory, duh, we're going to do it. And, and if it's something that we're doing in the district, don't add it.
Can I say something? For example, just now, statutory is that we have to screen our students when they come in because of the home language survey,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
So here we have Mr. Sikafus, who said that we will be using the IPT, and then you turn around saying that we probably will not use the IPT.
Initial placement
That's
with whatever
what we
resource.
need to know. What are you going to use? How are you going to implement? And that is totally absent. So that's exactly what we need. It's a great idea, but
Understood.
those pieces were missing.
It's an initial placement test, which whatever resource we're using, every resource will have a place where this kid is a diagnostic source.
Right, and so as a plan, you have to either you follow our plan or you create your own plan, submit to the state. You have to identify what assessments you're going to use.
Correct.
So here, since I do not see that there is no plan. In fact, you just said you're going to follow the district. In here, it did not say that. It just said you're going to follow the consent decree. As a district, we have to submit to the state
Yes.
our plan, submit it to the board, which is board approved, and then it's approved by the state. And so we have to identify every single aspect, what we're going to be using, how we're going to implement it. And that's, again, unfortunately, it's not here.
The department that oversees your department, Shane Eplin, and his staff there told me that you can actually ask for an amendment, and then when I asked again, they said, actually, you could just let us know how you're going to deviate if you're going to use the majority of the plan. So.
Right, which this would have been a great opportunity for you to do so.
Right here.
Okay.
Remember, we're looking for words, describe how, describe specific, provide plans for. So yes, everybody adheres to the LULA consent decree, but you're having to
Right.
explain for us.
Right.
So, okay, all right. We're running behind time, but since you guys are the last ones here, we can go over a little bit, right? Come on, you're in.
Cocktails, please.
I don't do it.
I'm very sorry, but I'm going to have to leave. I have
He's gonna
a
have
county
his own
meeting
cocktail
downtown.
right now. Okay.
He's
Right, Dan?
planning our Memorial and Veterans Day parade for all of Sarasota County,
Wow.
so he's got to go.
Thank you, Dan.
And we want jets this year, too.
Hey, Al, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, just checking on you. Maybe we should ask Al his question so he can kind of nod off again. Al?
Yes.
Okay, so Chris is going to ask you a question.
Okay, very good.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah, I think I'm on. So, what the question that the finance charter review team had was about the startup budget. So we had a letter in there from Building Hope for $500,000, but we didn't see the verification for the remaining. So that was what our question was, because that's basically how your entire startup budget and everything is built off of that. So yesterday I received a letter for the $500,000, and now, unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of opportunity, because we're right in the middle of budget, to actually do any kind of research on the organization. So, and Mitzi, our CFO, she's a part of the team, and so I've been checking my phone, Elaine, but only because I was checking to see if she was responding, just so everyone knows.
That's awesome.
No, I just want you to know I'm a good girl. I was just doing that.
She's never going to live that down.
No, it was a good point. So anyway, she had a concern just about the letter saying highly confident instead of
Confident letter.
a total commitment. So basically, like I said, that was what the question was going to be. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to do any research, and I haven't met with the team. So I guess just in general, then kind of going forward, and since I'm here with you guys, is wondering, because you say about outreach to local foundation and private donors as far as the commitment, but the silver mine looks like it's outside the state of Florida.
Yeah.
So just wondered how you, you found this organization and why you chose them. Are they in the education?
First of all, I think it bears notice that, we'll personally backstop this. So that's part of it. So don't worry about that. Silvermine is an investment partnership of which we've got a lot of our assets in. And so they deploy and funding. So not to get too crazy, but private equity is private equity. And so there's a lot of back scratching that happens. So if I need them to raise debt capital for me, they will.
So it's a personal relationship then?
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah,
And when you just
very
said
deeply.
and when you just said you would fund it personally?
I would backstop it, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, because obviously that's what it's contingent upon as far as startup.
Yeah,
and then the note in here, which I know that you guys address, and which I'm glad to see, is the FRS is mandatory for all employees.
heck
So,
yes.
which
Yeah,
of course
absolutely.
if the
We're trying,
contingencies in
guys, just generally, I think it bears notice. Our objective, we didn't want to open a charter school. We're not the people that came in first, right? Like we feel like this is a response. And it was actually Dr. Bowden who was like, do it. Okay. So from our perspective, we weren't thinking of like how this would be perceived in terms of the economics of this. We're not looking at this as an economic, like many of these, for-profit charters, they operate very differently. So from our perspective, from the economic side, the entire goal was really to get it planted, get it started, and then everything we're trying to align as much as possible with the district, because we feel like, because our mandate from Todd, honestly, was figure out if we can do this inside our schools. Like, prove it to me that this will work, and then we're going to bring this into the schools. Great. So that's honestly our marching orders and what we're working against. And so economically, that's what we're not planning on having, let's get the high school going, or whatever. That's just not what we're doing.
Which is another reason, we don't want to add a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We sought which would be the best place to actually continue this program, almost like a little magnet program. And that's why Dr. Harriet Moore, which I know you guys contacted, she is so enthusiastic. She even said, put it on my campus, I have 100 acres. We don't know where we're going yet, but that continuity to be able to have kids that are prepared for middle school and doing really well and taking those advanced classes in middle school, that's where the magic of acceleration happens. We want to work with you. There's a difference between collaboration and reliance. I know a lot of the comments coming back, you're relying on us for this or that, but we just want to collaborate. This is our home. This is our district.
Yeah, we chose it.
We just want to go, we're not trying like them to compete for the upper echelon of students. We want to go to the lowest quartile. And that is hopefully going to give you 10 percentage points over that B district grade instead of 1. That's what we want to do. That's why we're here.
And so that has an economic impact, for example, as Jerry indicated, Dr. Moore would love to see us on Macintosh land. However, that would mean portables.
And we'll keep 3 cows. And I think we could do, I will talk to the Macintosh heirs.
But that raises its own economic.
And I'm not sure she has the authority to do that, because both her boss and her boss's boss were a little surprised by that comment.
No, understood. And that's why it's
and
not.
Again, they're endorsing the idea, but I don't think they can't
Totally
commit resources.
Totally understand.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is,
they have the heart.
Yeah, but the economic impact of that, we don't know. Because portables, quite frankly, are more expensive than other choices. So, those are kinds of things.
Well, that was it. Thank you.
Hey, Al. So, any comments?
The deal on that, I came down from Tennessee to Florida. I overlooked everything they had put together on the financial side. And the one thing that we went over was what kind of contingency there was there, because when you're drafting a budget, it's an estimate of what's going to happen.
Right.
And what I looked for was they were trying to be conservative, like on their revenues on the out years. They didn't put in being 22 students per class in grades 4 through 8. And so when I saw that, when we're putting everything together, and of course the accounting firm did the bulk of the work, I did find a couple things that I thought were going to get corrected, but didn't. But anyway, in summary, because it has a $380,000 fund balance, could say, or excess of revenues over disbursements, I felt comfortable that they had enough of a contingency to meet maybe some unforeseen needs that will be there. The Florida retirement was an oversight, and that is going to use about $80,000 of that $380,000 contingency. I looked at what they built in as the other expenses, and because they had a detailed Excel spreadsheet we went through when I came down from Tennessee, and we all met together as a board, and I felt comfortable that they had enough other contingencies in there. And again, Tom Chaffee has so many connections, and I was very impressed with his ability to do financing and so forth. I felt comfortable with what they were doing. So I just wanted to give a overall statement of really my role per se was really trying to make sure from the 30,000 foot level, everything looked good on the financial side. And then, of course, really my role will be when we go into, hopefully, in the contract, to make sure we've got the necessary language in there that because they want to be a FRS employer, that it indicates they are a public employer, because you can't say you're a private employer and be part of the FRS system. So there's a lot of little things that, as we go through the process, that's where I was hoping my role would help with smooth opening of the school in 2019. So with that, I won't take any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you so much.
You have the bird's eye view. I'm in the weeds, so it's a nice compliment. So again, the application did require that you have a contingency plan spelled out, and the answer was that if it comes in, if revenues come in below expected, we'll revise our plan. So again, telling us you're going to have a plan is not the same thing as providing a plan, as Al mentioned. And of course, you guys don't have to offer FRS. Am I correct? You don't have to.
But we will.
That's
Okay.
correct.
I mean, sometimes you don't first couple years, and then when you get settled, then you can
Complicated.
offer it. A lot
Dan's
of
gone
charters
through
do
it
that.
4 times, and he said, well, you got to do it from the
Yeah.
beginning.
It's just if you don't have the finances starting out, you may, that's an
We
option
will.
that you have.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other budget questions? Okay, you can go have your nappy now, Al.
Well, it's been enjoyable listening to you all, and brings back memories.
It sure does.
Yeah, exactly.
We do
So,
miss you, but we know you're at the landings up there in Tennessee.
That's right. That's right. Every time I look at it, it's a memory.
It's so
That's
weird.
correct.
Okay,
Bye, Al.
bye. No, his
Okay.
development is called The Landings.
Can't get away. It's like The Godfather.
Okay, so real quick, I do have to, on the section 5 on the student performance, you know, this is a very unusual section. I always tell DOE they should chunk it up differently, because there is a section about your performance goals, like your school improvement goals. There's a section about assessments and how you monitor progress and all of that, and then there's a chunk in the middle about student progression plans. So I spent time on it, as you can see from all my scribbles, and I also independently gave it to our research office and said, please look at it. So yeah, there's some goals there, but there's also a lot of unclarity. And this is my area of expertise, so I have to say that from the get-go. And we get the fact that you have your cohort of kids and your K kids coming through, we get it. It's also, though, a little bit, we hesitate if there's not going to be any goals, talking school improvement goals, the outcome goals for your school until the 6th year of operation. And so it was kind of a little bit unclear to us. And again, we're using the language of the application. And there were some where that we didn't see it. So again, in some of your responses, I see the frustration, and like, well, we told you we have this assessment. Well, having the assessment is not the same thing as having a goal. So we were pleased that you're having other assessments that are more relevant for your program, but there was no outcome. Like, okay, we're going to have 80% proficient, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So that's what we meant. So again, the responder to our questions came back with, well, we have these assessments. We're doing iReady. And that's not what we're asking.
When we saw the word goals, if the word school improvement would have been right in front of it, that would have clarified and made all the things fall on hand, and maybe that was an oversight here. Now, we do have school improvement goals that we've hence developed that address every area of the school grade, with proficiency gains, learning gains at the bottom quartile for reading and math, and also for science. We have attendance goals and referrals as far as discipline, and also for our parent involvement as well.
It does say your academic goals. You know, this is
correct. And when we were thinking about the cohort, we didn't add by May 2020. This is what we're going to have.
You don't have to be that specific, but it does require that you have measurable goals with some targets, that it be clear to the reader. And we saw it going back and forth between the cohort and your other students.
Right.
And then we asked about science and the other subject areas, and it says, oh, here they are on page 29 and 30. And I don't know, I see no reference to science, so maybe I'm missing it. I went back and read it again. And again, the person who replied mentions all the tests and the testing calendar. We're not talking about that. Or we are referred back to the section that talks about using iReady and progress monitoring, and that's great. That's for informing instruction, for guiding student work, these are your big ticket items. And again, the reason I press that is because in statutory language, the one thing we can hold you accountable for are your goals as presented in the application. So now, what do we do? Because they're not presented clearly in the application. So. Again,
We do have school improvement goals. We've got them listed out, and we've got the numbers registered, so we can at least, during our first developmental years, since we have such small 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we can isolate them and really support them, so to ensure that the interventions for the remediate for the bottom quartile group and throughout are ratcheted in there to get that A the very first few years. But that was when we saw goals, we saw, generally speaking, regarding the cohort, so.
Right. Well, and even your mission-specific goals, again, there are no measurable goals except for here and there, and yes.
When you say page 29, to address the initial reading and math achievement needs of the students, our goal will be to increase these scores by 5% each year so that by the time Dreamers cohorts reach their 3rd grade year, the school will have 70% proficiency in reading and 75% proficiency in math. The 5% progression in achievement each year provides a manageable increase in academic growth, while the learning community is implementing the dual language model in the lower levels. Is this, I mean...
That's for your cohort of kindergartner kids? Mm-hmm. So we have to wait quite a few years before we have evidence that the school is successful, and that was one of the comments.
Okay.
And then for the other goals, we're assuming it was for the traditional program students, but again, we shouldn't be assuming and speculating, and it wasn't clear.
Right.
No.
The mission of the school is to be, grade level reading, math, to enter middle school grade level. I mean, that's everything throughout the 300 pages supports that. So if it wasn't as specific, I mean, we were given questions. Those were what we answered, and apologize if you didn't see it, or if you needed more. Hopefully the 80 pages of clarification answers provided some clarity. That's, we're so...
You're repeating verbatim text that was in here, or
Right.
you're referencing the reader, the reviewers, to a page where there are no science goals, or you're referring the reader to the place where it talks about
Right.
assessment for driving instruction and not the performance outcomes for the school.
Right. The clarification answers are not repeating anything. That's all new content. The only places where we actually repeated copy were in the concerns, weaknesses, and deficiencies, because there's no opportunity to amend or change. So we just pointed to places where perhaps this is the answer to the question.
No, because it's one page only, and believe me, I've read it 20 times,
I
so you don't have to give me
understand.
the same text again.
Okay.
I'm still not seeing it.
We do have school improvement goals for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade.
Okay.
We absolutely do, and they're aligned to the Florida school grading system.
But just to be clear, they were not presented in the application.
Right. There was not a question that says, give us your school improvement goals.
It's not referred to as school improvement goals.
Right,
They call
exactly.
them your performance goals, measurable performance goals for
Exactly.
the achievement of your students. I think it's clear to any reader what the intent is here.
Right. There's a difference between measurable performance goals and school improvement goals. And, in my opinion, there is a difference. But we will talk to the FLDOE and tell them, can you please specify if you want school improvement goals? We will answer that
I
question.
use the word school improvement to help people understand the difference between assessments that go on a day-to-day basis versus this is the outcome that I expect for this program. This is
Exactly.
what I'm going to
Okay.
hold you accountable for.
Good.
And it's the words used, performance, your growth improvement and your student performance goals for your school.
And let me just let you all know that this school, we want to be accountable to you. We want to be accountable to you. That's why we're not going for a private Catholic school, which has been offered. We're not going for a voucher school. We want to be within the public school system, accountable to you. We don't want to be members of the community, many of them asking you to be accountable to us for these student populations. You want to have us on the inside of the tent. I want to be accountable to the community from the inside.
The whole purpose we have here is to clarify and see if we have the capacity. You had some very pertinent questions, and sometimes between trying to figure out the application you put in and also the practice that we plan on implementing, there seemed to be somewhat of a disconnect, and we want to make sure that during this this meeting that we're able to go ahead and at least address some of the concerns that are there, because our ultimate goal is to make sure that our kids, whatever their kids, whether the child has special needs, is a lacking reader, or has a child that's still learning the language, progresses through the school, make sure that they're aligned on the outside to be better than what our whole region, not just Sarasota, everybody in Florida is having a difficult time trying to go ahead and meet the needs of our kids that are still learning the language. And we want to make sure that the kids that walk through the door, regardless of what shade of brown they are, they can go ahead and be successful and match up to not only Sarasota County school system, but the other school systems wherever they go, because we know they move. So thank you for your feedback during this first process time, and making sure that we can move forward with doing what's right by the kids, and maybe even help innovate the school districts around here to see that we can be successful with this kind of model that might not be in this region yet.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members? Nope, we're way past time, so I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
And so the next step is, again, some things you were able to clarify, and we can go back and revisit. So sometimes something will move from does not meet to a partial, but some things, if there's big chunks missing, you can't clarify something just with a brief conversation. So again, just remember the committee's ratings will be based on this application. All right? Thank you.
Anybody can Google this application, Dreamers Academy, Sarasota. Anybody in the public that wants to read it can go and read it. So.
Right, it's posted on our website. It's a public document.
Yep.